We're doing. If you're, I just want to make it nice for you. That's what I want to do, Fergus. That's all.
Okay, thanks. Good morning, everybody. Fergus Dolan here from NALA, the National Adult Literacy Agency. We're delighted to have you here this morning for our webinar on ideas and tips for telling stories via Zoom. And we're thrilled to have Paul Timoney, Storyteller, here to facilitate this morning. So, hi, Paul.
Hello.
I'm going to hand you over to Paul, and if you have any questions or any comments or tips or anything that you would like to get out of this webinar, please put them in the chat questions function, and Paul will try and deal with them during the webinar. So over to you, Paul.
Oh, thank you very much. So, and just to remind you, Fergus, you did ask me to remind you to record, but I'm sure you are recording, given that the whole point of your introduction was that you were recording. But just in case, as you were focusing on the introduction, you didn't also press the record, do press the record. Okay, so it's good to know also that some people are interested in doing like a Facebook live stream, because again, that's a slightly different from doing a Zoom. And then the other weird thing about the fact that I'm presenting to you today, talking about Zoom but not being on Zoom, is going to be another whole challenge in itself. But that is the excitement of technology. That is the way it goes. So what I'm going to focus on a lot today is, I suppose initially when sorry, there's just a message coming in here. So, I don't know what that means. I hope you can still hear me. So initially, I think when people started storytelling and presenting over Zoom, a lot of the focus was upon the challenges that Zoom presented. But actually, the more we got to work with Zoom and some of its various features, start to realize that there are actually some advantages to working via the Zoom when one is storytelling. Now, one of those that I found that really, really works tremendously well is using the whiteboard. So again, I'm not going to actually use the actual technical whiteboard with you today. I'm just going to show you the kinds of things that I might do on a whiteboard. I'm going to use an actual physical whiteboard to do this. But Zoom does have a whiteboard. When you go to screen share, you can select whiteboard, and then when you do that, it means that you can draw on the screen, and also anybody who's participating or watching your storytelling event can also draw on the screen with you. So some of the things I found that really, really useful for is things like, so there's a very simple story that if any of you have much experience in storytelling, you've probably come across before. It's whereby, and if you haven't, feel free to steal and use this, because kids particularly quite like this, where you go, I'm going to tell you a story about a dog. And you need to listen very, very carefully, because a lot of people don't spot where the dog is. So you gotta really look out for this dog, all right? And then the story goes like this. It's a very simple story, and you can learn it because it's also a song. But I'm not gonna do it as a song. I'll do it as a song. I'll give it to you as a story first, and then give you the tune after. But we don't want to start a presentation with me doing a song. So it goes like this. There once was a boy with no arms. He got chased by some bees, so he jumped into a lake. He climbed 2 mountains and he got shot twice. He went up to heaven and grew angel's wings. That's a story. Where was the dog in that story? And then there's a whole heap of confusion, or people to say, oh, maybe he had a dog, maybe there's a dog in his pocket, maybe there was a dog in the lake, maybe there's but they don't ever spot the dog. So you can do that. Then you can say, no, you need to listen really, really carefully, and you do the story again, or you sing the story. Mother of God, am I doing this? I really am. This is one of the odd things about this GoToWebinar function, because while I may be talking to, I don't know, I think he said 90 people, I feel like I'm in my bedroom by myself looking at a small postage stamp sized image of myself talking back. It's kind of surreal. So I assume you're out there. And that's another thing about Zoom. You kind of have to assume things are going tremendously well. With Zoom, you do have the advantage of the fact that you're able to see people, so you get a certain amount of physical communication back, like non-verbal communication in terms of gesture, in terms of facial expression, in terms of its intensity. But at the moment, this is just me talking to my computer as if there's nobody here. It feels like a rehearsal, but it's not a rehearsal. So
we're all here, Paul.
Well, believe it. I'm just going to do it like we're on a date, Fergus. That's what I'm going to do. And I'm just a very chatty man. We're not going to respond to me at all. So this is how the song goes. There once was a boy with no arms. He got chased by some bees, so he jumped into a lake. He climbed 2 mountains and he got shot twice. Went up to heaven, grew angels' wings. Probably still haven't spotted the dog, but I will do this now on the whiteboard. There once was a boy with no arms. He got chased by some bees, so he jumped into a lake. He climbed 2 mountains and he got shot twice. Went up to heaven, grew angels' wings. And now you probably see the dog at this point. So again, that works really, really nicely on the whiteboard. And the lovely thing about it, particularly when you do it as a song, is that your whiteboard function also has this sort of an arrow on it that allows you to do a step back. So you can do a step backward on each stage of your drawing, so that you can go back to where you had a blank canvas, and then you can just do the song again with everybody, and you can just keep making each bit appear. The other lovely thing about when you do a story like that, and I always think it's really, really important, one of the things that I think is really important about storytelling, particularly if you're doing something interactive and with a small group, is that storytelling doesn't have to be a passive. It can be very, very interactive, and it can also be very, very creative for the people taking part in the story. So you might do a story like that, and then you might say, okay, let's say maybe the boy doesn't have no arms. Let's give him back his arms, and let's say he was being chased by something else. What could he have been being chased by? And then you can come up with a whole new story by just changing those little elements of what he was being chased by. How did he escape from the things he was being chased by? What happened to him next? And again, you'll find that once you've gotten it's often nice to do an activity. I find when you're doing storytelling, do an activity where there is a very clear right answer, so that the people get to interact with you. And then when they've done that, they sort of feel as though they get a sense of their relationship with you, and your rapport, and your enthusiasm, and your goodness and decency, and all those sorts of things, so they can become confident in feeling that they can speak to you, and then they're much more inclined to start coming up with imaginative ideas as well. But I've just found the whiteboard is tremendously good for that, because there's just this excitement and novelty around the idea of suggesting something and then seeing it drawn right in front of their eyes. The other lovely thing about Zoom is you can make the whiteboard so that the whiteboard can be a collaborative affair, so that you're drawing and they're drawing, and you can sort of create something together. You can create an image which can then be related back to your story as well. Another thing I've been using the whiteboard for is that I might begin with a shape, like a random shape, or I might have a shape in mind. And again, this is storytelling for small groups rather than really, really huge groups. But I might start off with something on the whiteboard that is a shape like this. I've been using a bit lately, because it is sort of not anything in particular necessarily, and it could be any number of things depending on what people want to, what way they want to direct their imagination into it. So some people have turned it into an upside down car, and again, if you're using that collaborative thing, you can allow people to turn it into an upside down car using their own drawing, or you can just take suggestions and make the drawings yourself. And then once you do that, this strange image then can lead to more questions. So we say, okay, so now we have a car that's upside down, but how did the car get turned upside down? And again, then that will lead to a whole story where you're creating a story together with the participants in the storytelling session. So maybe a huge giant turned it upside down. So this is one of the lovely things I found about storytelling and working with small groups of people, is that oftentimes you tell a story and then you can create a story together. And the way that I always think, the sort of simple model I use for the idea of creating a story is asking questions. So I'm trying to work out who this story is going to be about. So it might be, who would have a car that got turned upside down, who was driving the car or who else was in the car with them. So I'm thinking about the character, I'm thinking about the setting. So where did this happen? How did it happen? Is it in water? Is it in outer space? Is it in somewhere real or somewhere fantastical? And then the other element I always put into a story is character, is setting, and then a challenge that we have to overcome. And if you just think of those three things, they're often that's the model for most stories, really, that you have a character in a place who has some sort of a problem. And one of the if I were to push that model a little bit further, then I would say that sometimes you have solutions that don't work, which will help you arrive at a solution that does work. And then that is the very sort of very basic bones of a story and story creation. And that seems to be working for me anyway, very well over Zoom. One thing I do find that's probably worthwhile to invest in if you're storytelling and you want to use the whiteboard, and if sort of using images is one of your things, would be to invest in a stylus and to use. I do most of my zooming over my iPad, and it just means that I can draw I can draw pretty much as if I'm drawing. It's the same as if I'm drawing with a pen. It's a little bit more challenging with a mouse, but not impossible. And also, I think one of the lovely things about when you're drawing and when you're working with kids is that they quite like your mistakes anyway. I remember when I was doing some live workshops with librarians, somebody made this used this phrase that I thought was a lovely way of describing the idea of making mistakes. And she had said that as a librarian telling stories, she thinks of herself always as a happy amateur, by which she meant that if she's reading a story and she flubs a word or she messes a sentence or she doesn't turn the page properly or something like that happens, she models the idea of, oh, sure, I'm an awful. Well, that doesn't really matter at all. That she regards her mistakes with a sort of humor and compassion for the self, which I think is a tremendous thing to do, because you're modeling that then for the people in the audience, showing them that mistakes are very much a part of the sort of creative process, which I think is a very important message to get across, so to make people more free in their engagement with creative endeavor. So anyway, that's enough about whiteboard stuff. I'm going to tell you another one of the advantages that I think is there with the Zoom, and that is using what's called virtual backgrounds. So anyone that has used Zoom before will have seen that there's a little array of things called virtual backgrounds, and they're just literally the background will change behind you, and you can take photographs from your gallery or your show reel, and you can make them the backdrop of what's behind you. And Zoom seems to be quite good at identifying your body, your face, your arms, so that as you move, there's minimal sort of that weird kind of sensation where your fingers disappear and your eyes and head disappear. It doesn't happen very much on Zoom. It's actually quite good at that. But one of the things that I've been finding when you're telling stories is it means that you can be switching your background, so that you can be in different environments and different settings. One of the things I found that particularly good for was if I was taking on a character, and a particular character that has been working very well for me at the moment is this fellow here, and he has a Garda Síochána, and when I am talking as the Garda Síochána, what I will often do is I will get myself a Garda Patrol a background, just a simple, as though I was in a Garda Patrol studio, and then what I will do is I will tell some stories to the children about the various crimes that have taken place in Knockbjog, which is the village where I patrol, and I will tell them about some of the awful things that have befallen and befell the glorious population of Knockbjog, and then they will also share with me some of the crimes that have taken place, which we will then try to solve as well. But this is one of the beautiful things about the Zoom, is that you can take on a character very easily. You don't have the sort of, sometimes if you're storytelling live, it is very clear what you're doing, which is no harm, it's its own kind of thing, but people see you go down and reach for the cap, whereas what I can do when I am taking on various characters in a Zoom type situation
is I can literally step off of the screen and then come back on as a different person altogether, which again is something that the young people of the world seem to find quite exciting, because they are always terribly frustrated because they want to prove to you that you are in fact the person that they just saw, but now you're dressed up as someone else. But you can annoy the heck out of them by simply going, I am not, I will prove it to you now, I'll go and fetch that Paul fellow and I'll send him back into you.
Yeah, no, we're actually two totally different people. So he's there, I'm here. You want us both on the screen together? Oh, well, he's actually gone out of the room now, so I can't. Sorry. As soon as he comes back, that is what is. So anyway, you kind of go through that, and that's that can be quite exciting. So that's another thing that I found works really, really well in terms of that, switching into different characters and having your different backgrounds. And if you have a story that has 3 or 4 different settings, then you can sort of prepare ahead of time and have your different backdrops set up so that as you're telling your story, you can be switching location. Just while we're on that subject, is one of the things that I'm finding really useful when I'm telling stories as well is just the setup of your camera and the freedom you allow yourself to move and the freedom you allow yourself to communicate using gesture and using all of your body. So I think sometimes because we get used to the idea that when I'm on a computer, I'm used to being here, so this is how I'm going to be on my computer. See if you can set your what I have a not very fancy, but I have a tripod which I bought online for 24 euros, and it's just one of these. If you ever go on Amazon, you can just get an iPad tripod or an iPhone tripod, and it's just they're just quite useful for just sitting on a table, and then you can walk back and forth, and it just means that you can use all sorts of other effects as well. So when you're telling stories, and if somebody's going to come up and be very creepy next to the camera, then you can do that, and you create a contrast then when you're further away. If you want to do sort of big gestures, if you need to spell things out, like if we're all going to make a big M together, things like that, it means that I've got all this space around me that I can fill using my body. Then I can create other effects, like I can, if I'm, oh my gosh, because I'm gonna, oh my god, I'm rising up, I can do things like that, which I just have a chair behind me there. But you can create all sorts of kind of interesting visual effects like that, and just little surprises, which again, is different when you're storytelling in real life. It's not to say that you don't use those storytelling techniques in real life where you create interesting visual effects, but there is somewhat of an advantage to working on Zoom, because of course you've got this camera which has a sort of a viewfinder on it, and it means you can select what people can see and what they can't see. So if you want to kind of hide the magic of what you're doing because you've got something hung up here that you're hanging off, and you want the people to sort of see you start the story with just your legs hanging into shot, well, that would be a pretty good story for kids. Another thing I was going to suggest, all sorts of something terrible has happened. But if you want to do something unusual, like making somebody fly or anything like that, you can kind of create those effects. Another way that you can create interesting effects using Zoom, and Fergus, do feel free to interrupt me now if anybody has any questions or comments.
They're loving it, Paul. There's plenty of positive comments coming about your props and everything. They're loving it.
Oh my sake, that's good. I hope they're not. I hope you're telling me the truth. So another thing I find really works well with when you're doing Zoom things is working with puppets. And again, it's part of the reason that it's so effective is that you've got that kind of, you've got the viewfinder. So you can literally fill the screen with your puppet, and you don't have to be present with the puppet. So you can literally be,
hello, I'm actually going to take over this presentation now, and I'm going to do the rest. Well, I'm just going to do the rest of it. I'll probably do it in a moment or so, because I'm not going to just do. I'm much a little nervous now. It is very odd, actually. Like, it does feel like you're just talking to yourself. That's the most peculiar thing about it, I really didn't realize, oh my God, it's uncanny. I'm actually not comfortable with it at all. I'm going to get that poor fellow back. But you can see the point he's making, that when I am on the screen, I am fully on the screen, and I am obviously, Paul, he's not even a very good ventriloquist. His mouth is moving like crazy, but you would have no idea. It looks like it's just me talking here. So, you know, I could tell a whole story for children, and you know, they'd be very excited by the whole affair. Or if you had a story that involved different characters, or if you want to just create a texture and add a sort of a variety to your story, you could have some of your story being told live by Paul, like you hear, just by me, and yes, very good, thank you, Paul. And you could have some of the story being told by a totally different character, a totally different person, which is really, really nice. The other lovely thing I think about having a puppet sometimes is that the puppet can become the voice of the person who's watching the story. So that obviously, say if Paul is telling a story, and he's being all Paulish about it, perhaps he just seems like too much of a middle-aged man to really, you know, represent the kind of questions and queries and wonderings that a child might have. Whereas I could very easily sort of say, oh, Paul, could I interrupt your story for a moment? I didn't really understand what was happening. So you might have to explain that to me again. And then I would have to explain another part, but my puppet here would become the voice of the person listening to the story. So that can be a really, really effective technique when you lack that, when you lack the same level of interaction that you would have in real life, where you can literally see and hear and take questions in real time. You can sort of have a character that represents the person who might be watching and saying, oh my goodness gracious me, that Goldilocks really seemed like, oh, why do you think she, I'm just confused as to why she thought it might be okay for her to, you know, go and eat that poor little bear's porridge. Yes, I suppose, but by the end of the story, she did seem to learn that maybe that wasn't the right thing to do. Yes, it really was a good lesson. I'm so glad she was safe, though, by the end of it. Yes, me too. You know, so we can be having that kind of conversation, and my little puppet here can become the representation of the voice of the audience, given that I don't have the voice of the audience in the way that I would in a live situation. On that note, actually, I teach in a school in Mullingar as well called St. Bridget's School, and one of the things that the teachers were finding over the first lockdown, when they were doing a lot of their teaching online, is that one of the positive aspects of being able to interact with people one at a time, and that most people, the participants were generally muted, and then if they had something to contribute, they put their hand up and they would have something to say. One of the advantages that's happening with that in storytelling is that I'll often go into a class in the school to do storytelling, and there are some children that are so exuberant and excited and they can't contain themselves. So they sort of end up taking over that they become the voice of the entire audience. Or they're on top of you, they want to touch the puppet and they want to do everything. And then there are quieter children that sort of maybe feel a bit left out of that, or maybe when an opportunity comes to interact in the story, you ask a question, they have something that they're about to say, but then a louder person gets in much quicker than them, so they're not given the opportunity to. Sometimes the quieter people aren't given the opportunity to speak. One of the lovely things about the way that the kind of Zoom storytelling works is if you have a question, you can ask a question. If the same person has answered questions for you 3 times, you can look to the people who might be a little bit more reticent and give them an opportunity, and that way when everyone else is muted, they find it much easier to find their own voice. So I think that's been one of the advantages we're finding in working with Zoom as well. It also means that if you're working with a group of children with special needs schools, the school I teach in is a school for children with special needs, it means that different people in the audience can engage with the story in the way that they want to. So you can be telling a story sometimes, and some people love to hear a story, and as they're hearing the story, they want to shout the words, and they want to scream, and they want to dance, and they want to. And again, with Zoom, they can do that, but it doesn't interfere with the experience of anybody else. So, so it just means that it's a kind of it makes it so that
people can have can engage with the story whatever way they want to, and the quieter people then don't have the energy, the atmosphere of the space changed against their will. So that's one of the things we're finding useful about storytelling over Zoom as well. So which is not to say that I really desperately want to go back to storytelling in real life, but I think it is important to kind of sometimes know some of the things that Zoom is teaching me, and anyone else is doing storytelling or teaching is probably finding that same thing. It's like, oh my God, I didn't realize that person actually had so much to say when they had the space to do it. So again, that's something I'm going to really be conscious of when I do go back to live storytelling, is that thing of trying to make space for the quieter people, so that because sometimes there's a kind of there's an ease in just communicating with the people that are kind of going full throttle at us, and it just makes it just has sort of really hammered that point home to me, that that's an important thing to think about. So another thing I discovered particularly over the first lockdown, when I was doing storytelling online, and I was doing a lot of live stream Facebook, because I know somebody mentioned that as well. So the lovely thing about the Facebook live stream, again, is you've got all those advantages with the videos and all that. One of the lovely things though was that because in the first lockdown it had kind of come suddenly, I didn't have a lot of my props and puppets and things like that. So I had to make a lot of things in a very sort of makeshift way, but actually it ended up being creating this kind of interesting and pleasant aesthetic that I think kind of worked out really well. So for instance, I was telling the story of Billy Goat's Gruff, and I had this tube and I had this hat. So in order to like become the goats, what I would do was, this was the mother goat, who was, you know, tremendously gentle and lovely goat. But when I wanted to become the father goat, who was the gruffer goat, what I would do is I just had greater, bigger horns. But this is a very, very simple sort of a setup here for making a goat's head, just using bits and pieces I had around the house. But I think sometimes being forced into that position where you have to be quite inventive is actually quite amusing for the people who get to watch you tell your stories. The other thing I found is, yes, you're probably thinking to yourself, he thinks he looks tough, but he doesn't look as tough as he could look if he was wearing a leather jacket. But I bet he didn't have a leather jacket with him in that first lockdown. Why would he have a leather jacket? He doesn't look cool enough to even own a leather jacket. Well, you're right, I don't own a leather jacket. But yes, I did come up with an inventive way to create the impression of me wearing a leather jacket. So let me show you how that works. Yes, here I am in a leather jacket now, as the very, very tough goat on his way over the bridge that third time when the troll is about to get himself into big trouble. Oops, sorry, my zip was bent over a bit there. But as you can see, so I'm going to undermine this illusion now by showing you that this is actually just a very, very small leather jacket. But again, because I have this effect I can create using the camera, I can sort of give this, I'm not saying it's Marvel level CGI, but it's kind of, I suppose that's part of its charm, is that there's a kind of, you kind of know what's happening, but you appreciate the effort. So this is just a little jacket made out of, this is like a little bit of foam that I happen to have that was a dark color. So I just kind of made it so that, as you can see there, so that's the foam makes those little colory bits there. And then this is just the shredded piece of, if you're ever using like an A4 page from a refill pad. So just to make the zip using that. And I had a little stud there, but it fell off unfortunately, but I managed to get back on again. And that's just a little paper clip as well. So it just gave this really nice kind of opportunity to kind of make things using really, really simple bits and pieces from around the house. And then this is just all on a stick here like this. So as you can see, this is tiny, but then as soon as it comes close to the screen, it's nice and big. Then another nice thing you can do if you're making puppets like that, if you want to make little characters, this was my troll character. So again, as you can see, he's only that size. But when I bring him very close to the screen like this, you can actually see what's my lights like there. Yes, you can see my six-pack. I can shake my head. I've got a wart made out of a macadamia nut. I've got googly eyes, and I've got made of various bits of woolly hair and things like that.
but I'll just give you a slight reveal here. So let me see, this is how my body is made, just from a piece of sponge, and that's a little orange feather. My six-pack is just drawn onto me there, and then my head is a lid that is just stuck on there. So you can see that's a reasonably effective use of just materials to make a troll like that. And then the closer I come up to the screen, the more and more gigantic I look. So, you can see that that's a rather, amazingly effective way to create a troll, just using two separate pieces, and that gives me a sort of a range of movement and things like that as well.
But again, so that works really nicely on things like Facebook Live or Zoom. And then if I wanted one other puppet to make my small goat, my little baby goat. Unfortunately, I didn't have a goat puppet, but I did have a sheep puppet. So I used my sheep puppet, but also just gave him one of these kind of thingamajigs here, just to give him some horns as well. And again, that was perfectly adequate, and even kind of, in some sense, sillily funny way of making the baby goat, because I think people quite like that sometimes when they can see through what you've done, but their imaginations also sort of want to go with it as well, just because of the sort of silliness of it, because you're not anywhere near that line of in the realm of the uncanny, where people are like, oh, that's disconcerting because it's almost real, but it's not quite there. I think when you're not close to real, that's when people are really inclined to invest their imaginations into a thing. And so this does become a goat rather than a sheep. And I do become a goat when I've got this on. Whereas if I sort of had a weird halfway there, like I took the head off a real goat and put it over my own head, that would be creepy. So I'm saying this is better. Okay, let me just see what else I have here. So I was going to say that's been one of the useful things I found around telling stories, and just using the kind of props that you will find just around your house. So for another story that I've been doing a bit lately, I've been using these props here. It's the story of the lion and the mouse. I won't go through it now. Just better check the time actually. 11:30, 39. Okay, no, that's okay.
Yeah, you're okay for time, Paul.
Cool, that's grand. So again, for the story of the lion and the mouse, I did have a lion, so I used my own little lion puppet here. And again, he has a little he walks like that, and he can talk and all that sort of thing. So he's my lion. I didn't have a mouse, so I had to make a mouse again. I did have a few of these spongy things, like what I made the belly of the troll out of. So I was able to make this mouse here as part of the story. He only has one eye though, but that became part of the story as well. This is the story of when the mouse wakes the lion up in his cave and makes him very, very angry, so angry that he's about to eat him, and then the mouse begs him, please don't eat me, oh, I'll do you a huge favor someday if you don't. And the lion thinks that's so ridiculous and absurd that he makes him laugh, and he tosses the mouse out of his cave saying, oh, you're lucky you made me laugh. And then eventually the lion gets caught in a big net. So I just made that as it was one of my mother's old shopping bags. Switches, looks very net-like. So the lion ends up being stuck in this net, which is just a shopping bag, and none of the other animals are able to help him out because it's such a wonderfully sturdy man-made net. But the mouse is the only one, because of his little claws and his diminutive size, he's able to clamber all the way up the tree, all the way across the branch, down the rope that holds the net up onto the branch of the tree, and he works his way in deep into the net, and he starts to nibble, and he nibbles at a strand for as long as it takes to snap it, and then the next one he snaps it and makes a big hole, until eventually the lion makes his way all the way out. And having been humbled by the awful effect of being upside down in a net for so long, it's another thing I like about the whole zooming thing, is that I try to use all my body if I'm telling a story, even if I'm telling a story over Zoom. So I'm not just kind of a head. So I'm wearing some very embarrassing shoes at the moment, but so I will, as I'm upside down with the lion, I will actually try and fill the screen that way. So I think it's always important to
try and think of the various effects that I can create in the Zoom,
you know, that are unusual and that vary from the standard thing of being a face near a camera. So I think it just makes you a lot more versatile if you kind of don't mind making a little setup like that. If you sort of go, oh my God, I don't have a tripod or anything fancy like that. If you're just recording on your phone, or sorry, if you're just zooming on your phone, then let me see, my phone might be just here. What do I do with it? Oh, here it is. So if you're just zooming on your phone, then here's a really simple little makeshift cheap tripod setup. You just get like a paper cup like this one here. You make two little holes in it, two little snips, and then you can sit your phone into it like that. And if you just rest that on a table, it's just a very, very simple little setup for a tripod. And if you're broadcasting your Zoom on your phone, it just means that you can then move yourself around at a distance. You can also use selfie sticks. You can use any sorts of, you can get tripods and deals or Mr. Price. And you can use another thing I had to set up for a little while was I had what do you call these thingamies that you have in your car for your sat nav, for when you're using your phone as a sat nav. So I had one of those, one just stuck on my kitchen table, and again just kept everything really, really still, but also then gave me that freedom to move and do and sort of do various kind of weird things. Now, I've only got a little time left, but I'm just going to show you a couple of little small other things that are kind of story related, and then but particular to the Zoom. So this is a little kind of, I guess, call it a visual aid from a workshop that I was doing with. I know a lot of people are in Kildare. So this we actually did this in with the Riverbank and with the Mermaid Arts Centre as well. But the Riverbank is the Arts Centre in Kildare, which is great. I'm sure you're probably all very familiar with it. Anyone who's from Kildare. But Alex is the I guess the head person there, and she's phenomenal, tremendous person to work with and for, and if you're not already in contact with her, it's really worthwhile maybe making that connection with her, because she's tremendous and always open to kind of doing all sorts of weird and unusual things. So the nice thing, again, another nice thing about Zoom is you can have something small like this. This is just a back of an old cornflakes box. And when I bring it up to the screen, I can fill the screen with a background like this. So the idea was, and the way I had my camera set up this particular day was that I could just sit this on the table, so I didn't have to hold it like this. I'm just holding it for this, just for this example today. And so the idea of what we were doing was, this was kind of around we started doing this. It's called the Zoom Zoo workshop, and this is Footface here. And he's sort of inspired by, I had been watching a lot of that TV show, what was it called again, The Lion King at the time. And one of the things The Lion King was doing was, well, I mean, it wasn't a great thing he was doing, but he inspired me to think that it could be an interesting thing for somebody to run a sort of an intergalactic safari. So that's what I was doing, a kind of a workshop with children where Footface would say hello to the children. He'd meet them like this. He would say, yes, I'm a very unusual space alien. I'm probably one of the weirdest things you'll ever see. But today what I'm going to do is I'm going to ask you to create some more interesting alien animals from your imagination. And we had a sort of a technique on how to do that, which I'll share with anyone that wants, but I won't go into it right now. But it was just a kind of a way of assembling random sorts of things together, like a foot and a face and a mask and a mouth and things like that. And it just helped people to make a sort of an unusual character, and then make an unusual background. So I come from a land where you can see here, that's Batman, there's Iron Man, Wonder Woman, all kinds of superheroes. They drive around in cars with fruit and vegetables on top of the cars, and they bring old women around the place. So it's just the kind of weird place I'm from. And then what I did is did a kind of a workshop where kids made their own different places and different characters, and then Footface would go around on his alien space safari, and he'd go around and meet all the different characters, and the kids would set up their cameras so that
their background fill the screen, and then Footface would just talk to their character. And again, seemed to work really well with the quiet kids as well, because they were getting to talk through the character. So they were also able to have the option of saying, oh, my alien doesn't speak any language you'd understand. He just goes. So it allowed them to be able to speak without having to necessarily come up with the really nerve-wracking part, which is actually having words. And that's that's one of the things I find public speaking is it's not so much the fact that you're making sounds, it's the fact that they have to make sense. That's the problem. So a good way to get used to public speaking is not to have to make sense. So that was one of the things. It's like if you allow people the option to scribble a picture, they're quite happy to scribble because there ain't no wrong answers to a scribble, just like there ain't no answers to gobbledygook if you're making gobbledygook. And then when you're doing gobbledygook, if you get used to it, and again, then you get a nice reaction from Footface, I'd encourage you to actually start speaking. So so these kind of things are very worthwhile first steps towards actually reaching that pinnacle of actually doing what I'm doing right now, which is talking to 90 people that I can't see, and just looking them right in the eye. So that was just a little workshop that seemed to work quite well. So we ran that. Just occurred to me we did run that with the riverbank, and again, so because we were using because it was the first lockdown and it was very difficult to access art materials and things like that, the idea was just to use things from around your house. But again, that's a kind of a nice, really simple technique if you want to do something storytelling, because then the other thing you can do is you can set up different backgrounds. You can even have just different pieces of paper here. You can make a bigger background if you want to make it easier on yourself as well. You could make a big background using an art pad, and then you'd be able to just flick your pages or turn your pages in order to make different backgrounds and have your puppet tell a story. The lovely thing about Zoom as well is you can also have a script if you want, and you can be reading off the script, but again, you can't be seen doing the reading off the script. It also means that you can have another person with you, and they can be doing voice, you can be doing the movement, and you can synchronize that and coordinate it really easily. Another lovely thing I've been finding that's working really well with storytelling for anyone that's doing I know somebody was saying in Kildare Library they were planning to do storytelling, is that I've been collaborating a lot lately with a musician, and we've been doing events, and sometimes like hour-long events, which is a good storytelling session, and is maybe sometimes feel like for certain age groups might be a bit much to try and do an entire hour of storytelling. Seems like quite a lot in order to keep concentration, especially when you're just asking people to look at a screen for an hour. It might be a little daunting for you to think I'm going to hold somebody's attention for that long, especially someone that young. But one of the things we're finding that's working very, very well is to do 2 songs and a story, 2 more songs and a story, 2 more songs and a story. And then what that's doing as well is when the songs are happening, the kids are really free to dance and move. So there's all that, whatever that tension is that builds in people when they're sitting and concentrating for 10 and 15 minutes at a time, they get to work all that out of their system, and then they're ready for a story again, and then a song again, and a story again, and a song again, and a story again. And the lovely thing about the Zoom as well means that my friend who's the musician, he lives in Oldcastle, and I'm here in Mullingar, but we can still have a show together from our separate, faraway places, and it seems to work really, really well. So I'd recommend that as well if you're doing storytelling, particularly for younger groups, and not even just for young groups. I think the relationship between storytelling and song is a really, really beautiful one, and is one always to consider if you have that option, because it works really, really well, and then it allows you and the person that you're performing with as well to have that interaction as well, because it is a little weird having this kind of thing where it's just one person talking, and I think people enjoy, as they're watching something, to be able to watch, to witness kind of dialogue. It can be a nice thing to do. So again, that's something it's another little technique I'd throw in there that works quite well over the Zoom. One other little thing I'm going to show you, excuse me, is this is a little
picture here from a series of Zoom workshops that I did with the Mermaid Art Centre. And so this is a little poem. What we were doing was we did a project that was all about things that children missed over the course of their first lockdown. And we had the idea that children might particularly miss their grandparents. And that wasn't always the case. Some of the, just one of the things I love about working with kids as well, they were very, very frank about stuff. Because I was like, oh, who missed their grandparents? And no hands went up. And I was like, did you miss your grandmother at all? No. And so there was a lot of that. But then there were some people that desperately missed their grandparents. But then other people who didn't miss their grandparents were able to tell us about the stuff they did miss, which is more like practical stuff like swings and their friends, and school was actually a common enough one, and playgrounds and things like that. But this is a little, what we did was we sent out these boards to all the schools, which were just kind of pre-prepared. We were doing this with schools and with families as well. And anyone we were doing the workshop with would get a board in the post and or delivered to their school, and then they were able to make a picture about representing the thing that they missed. It was like a picture and a poem. So that's my poem there as well. My grandmother goes like this. This is the thing I missed about her. I missed her because she's passed away many decades ago. The way you lean down to listen carefully. I don't know if it is because you were very interested or just a little bit deaf. And here's just some of the things I associated with her. Her glasses, she loved the old steamers. She always wanted to hold hands whenever she was walking anywhere. She's very good at listening to things. Loved talking about cards of chocolate, which is a phrase that I've only heard one other time in my life. She's called bars of chocolate, cards, chocolate, and glasses of Fanta was her other thing. So that was the picture I made for that. And then we did a there's a show currently in the Mermaid Art Centre, and actually it's a testament to them that they've put the exhibition on beautifully, and they've made a video about it, so it's well worth looking at their website. Okay, I think that's most of the things I wanted to say, Fergus. Well, I just see if there are any questions before June, because I think there's a few minutes left, and so I thought we'd leave a few minutes for questions if there are questions or comments.
Yep, Paul, thanks a million. That was absolutely wonderful, really very, very creative and enjoyable, and your imagination is fantastic, and I'm sure it's given people so many ideas. So well done, and thanks a million. I'll have a look now just at comments and questions. Yeah, so if you have any other comments or questions or ideas, please type them in now. I'll read out what we have so far.
Yeah.
So Catherine O'Reilly saying, I love that idea of getting the children to change the story. You know, I think she's talking about the bee story and the boy with the no arms.
Yeah.
Full participation. Thanks, Catherine.
Yeah, and you can do that with so many stories. It's really, really good, because most stories do follow that format of having a character in a setting solving a problem. So it can be different. What would you have done in this situation, or what would you have done if the character was your friend, or things like that are just really, really good for stimulating those kinds of ideas. And kids love contributing to stuff like that.
Excellent. Okay, Catherine O'Reilly says, I love that idea. Oh, sorry, I read out that. Aiding care. Oh my God, the props are such a brilliant idea. I'm definitely going to use this on Zoom. Thank you. Okay, Aiding.
Yeah. Props on Zoom are great. I like props in real life too, but props on Zoom, it just you can do somewhere, and then with the distance and all that, there's just so much you can do with props. It's really, really nice. And then again, I think it's like what the person was saying in the last comment as well, is that when you make something, it adds a whole other level of meaning into it, and there's imagination, and so you're kind of encouraging people to be independent. You're letting them see that they don't have to go and buy all the toys that they own. There are things you can make. Some of my favorite toys when I was a kid that I still own are the things my mother would have made, like sewn and stitched, and you know, there's so much meaning imbued in a made thing compared to a thing that you just go and buy. So yeah, I think it's a really worthwhile thing to do. And the other lovely thing as well is you always have to remember, like, kids are so open to, you know, if you want it, like this cup has an eye on it, now it's a cup, you know, hello, I'm cup, how are you? You know, and they quite like that, you know, just you picking up a random thing and just letting it become a character, letting it become something in your story, like this is a bomb now, oh my God. And just the more you're willing to invest your imagination into allowing the thing to be the thing that you're pretending it to be, it becomes that thing. And the less like the thing it is, the better.
Great. Okay, Ethna Murphy just has an image of somebody in tears laughing, so she obviously loved, I don't know, that was earlier, it might be during Billy Goat's or something.
That doesn't seem appropriate at all, Fergus.
Olive
But
Green
you send them on
Pierce
to me.
Well, I'll send her email to you. You can get the squad out of her. Olive Green Pierce saying, do you have difficulty with permission or rights with stories, i.e. with publishers, etc.?
What I tend to do is most of my stories are kind of made up stories. I know that was something that the libraries were having problems with for a while, because I know at the start of the lockdown, there was a really lovely there were heaps of stories coming out where it was like librarians reading stories to camera, and some of them were just phenomenal and tremendous stories. But I noticed that a lot of those posts got taken down. So often if I'm doing a story, I'll do like a really old story, like stories like the Billy Goat's Gruff and things like that are gone outside of their sort of, you don't have to worry about copyright. But I don't read sort of modern stories unless sometimes I'm employed by a publisher or a book company or something like that, and they specifically ask me to tell a particular story. But I do like to invent stories. I know it's probably different in the libraries. The librarians kind of can choose to, particularly if you're doing a live story, but over Zoom, yeah, I think you do have to be a little bit more careful if you're recording anything, particularly, or if you're disseminating anything over Facebook. I think yeah, you do have to have your copyright concerns then. But I think, excuse me, there are also, it's worth looking into as well, because some authors have literally given full-on permission, like do whatever you want. I know Neil Gaiman is one of those, because he understood that it was becoming a thing, that people were sharing stories, as a way of sort of saying, listen, I can't communicate as much over lockdown, but here's this story I love, and they would tell the story. And Neil Gaiman put out either a tweet or a message saying, anyone who wants to use my stories for anything, please feel free. I'm not going to be hounding anyone over copyright. So it does seem like it is something that you do need to concern yourself with if you're being recorded, particularly. But I think the standard rules apply in terms of it would be the same as if you were telling a story in a library otherwise, as long as it's not being recorded. That's what I think, but that's not my greatest area of expertise, so I'm not going to say that in a court of law or anything, but I think that's true.
Okay, thanks. I'll quickly read through. These are kind of positive comments type thing, I'll call them. So Norma, Brenda, Finton, Raymond, Alison, Murray, Sheena, saying things like, Paul, very creative, great tips, brilliant, well done, Paul. This is wonderful, full of ideas. That was excellent, many thanks. No questions, just a big thanks. It was so much fun. So I'm scrolling on down some questions.
Oh, well, I hear several more if they're there. That's nice. Holy shamoy.
Very useful, Aaron. Such fun. Can't wait to try out these stories and some of the new tips. Zooming into the camera with the props, etc. That was from Catherine O'Reilly. Carmel Elliott saying, fabulous presentation with so much food for thought. Thanks a mil. Carmel Hester saying, thank you, Paul. Very interesting. All the tips are great. Pam Buchanan saying, hi, Pam. Absolutely fantastic tips and ideas. Thank you, Paul. Love the props. One question. Do you ever have any technical problems with sound? How would you play the music? There can be sometimes issues with digital sound.
Yeah, that's one thing we are finding over Zoom a little bit. It's actually not too bad. Facebook is really good for that. Facebook, the live streaming on Facebook seems to really handle audio very well. I think Zoom seems to work reasonably well as long as there's not too much variety. It turns into a cacophony very quickly if there's more than one person playing. I think some of the things that I know people are doing is they're putting things online as if they're live streams, but they're not actually live streams. They're recordings that have been done, but they're being they salve their conscience by saying they're being broadcast live. So that is something that's happening. But we're finding that guitar and singing does seem to work reasonably well. So far, as I was saying, I'm doing that that show, which we've done as a Halloween show and a birthday party show. And yeah, I've noticed that sometimes the sound does drop out, but it's not such a hindrance that people are disengaging. It's more, I think people always appreciate the sort of the effort that one is making, and they allow for those sorts of technical problems in a way that they wouldn't at a live show. If you were to, you know, miss 5 or 10 or 7 seconds in a row, or that freezing thing that happens, people wouldn't put up with it. But I think people are quite generous now with their allowance for those things. You can use that as well, actually. Sometimes if you ever find yourself stuck as a storyteller and you go, oh my God, I can't remember the next verse, the next thing.
Excellent.
Just do that.
Sorry.
Oh,
I was reading the questions there.
You're kind of thinking to yourself, oh God, how does the story end? I don't remember. And, you know, they don't know that you're just here thinking in a frantic, you know, worried mess. So you can use that to your advantage. So, or if you find yourself, I'm not going to remember the end of the story, just go like that. And again, just create that. But remember, don't get too used to doing that, because we will go back to live storytelling again, and you're not going to get away with that in real life. If you start doing that, you're going to look like a lunatic. If I get used to this whole thing of every time I get to a part of a story that I don't remember, and I just is he thinking on Zoom right now? Because he's here in Kildare Library. This is actually happening in front of people. He's just looks like he's having a meltdown. So yeah. But I would, you know, do take advantage of the technical mishaps.
Okay, Paul, Amanda, I'm going to quickly read through some things. We might have time for about one more question, so I'll read some comments. Great tip with the coffee cups. Thanks. Definitely going to use the puppets. Anne Gilbride saying, thanks. Brilliant ideas. Amanda Smith says, Dublin can only use Irish publishers. I think she means Dublin Library, but I'm not sure. Amanda Smith then
saying, probably the librarians and the people in that would probably know a lot more about that than me.
Yeah.
So
but we can use any on Zoom as long as it's not recorded. Okay.
Oh, good. So I was right.
Kelly. Good. Ashton Kelly saying, love your webinar, excellent ideas. You give me so much inspiration. I cannot wait to implement the ideas of my own. Also had a great laugh. Thanks a million, Ashton from Maynooth.
Oh, that's so good.
Murphy saying, did you ever use the actual book?
Huh?
Edna Murphy's asking, did you ever use the actual book?
The actual book? Did I ever use the actual book?
That's what she's written.
Did you ever use the actual book? I'm not sure what that means. I'm going to say, yes, I did. I have used the actual book a lot. I love the actual book.
I'm going to skip. We've got about 1 minute. I'm going to fly on.
Cool. Can I tout if anybody wanted to ever have a storyteller, man?
Yes.
And so people do feel free to be in touch, and I have a website, paultimoney.club. It's .club, it used to be .com, and then it was overtaken by some bad people. So I switched over to paultimoney.club, and yeah, there are probably more storytelling bits and tips and workshops and ideas for stuff on there as well. So you're more than welcome to be there. And if you want a storytelling person ever, or a Christmas show, indeed, I am available for those with my partner Kyle James Riley, who does music, and yeah, so that we'd be happy to hear from anybody that's interested in things like that.
Well, I think they would be, Paul, because all the rest of the comments, about 10 more comments saying things like brilliant ideas, loved it, very inventive way of presenting stories, absolutely loved it, amazing, thanks very much, Paul. So I think we're going to have to finish it there, because just we've run out of time. It just leaves me to say thanks so much, Paul. I can see from the comments written, they absolutely loved your ideas and creativity and fun and humor and imagination. And a lot of them are saying, I'm going to try these things, and maybe they'll contact you as well, hopefully, to do some storytelling in their life.
It's lovely to know that people are going to try things as well, because I think that's the loveliest thing, is to know that it's so weird not to know anything about that there are at least 90 people now who have seen me and I don't know who they are or anything. So that is a bit freaky, but I'm glad.
I can see
Open
when the
house.
comments are out there, Paul.
Cool.
Thanks everyone for tuning into. And Paul, we're recording this, so in about a day or two, I'll put up on the Nala YouTube channel. So you
No
can look
bother at all.
back, or if a colleague missed it, you can send it to a colleague. But
Cool.
thanks, Paul. You've been fantastic. Bye, everyone.
Thanks very much. Bye, everyone. Thank you.
Okay, bye.